Okay, so here we are. Our situation is that we have installed VirtualBox onto our Windows system. Within VirtualBox, we have created an Ubuntu virtual machine, and we're going to use that Ubuntu virtual machine to build our Porteus Linux USB stick. Okay, so I'm actually going to try and work strictly within Ubuntu and not go between Ubuntu and the Windows desktop. So I've started up Firefox, which is the standard browser on Ubuntu. And the first thing we need to do is actually make sure that we have the proxy settings correct on this. So I'm going to go to Preferences, Advanced, and then Network Settings. And we're going to auto-detect proxy settings for this network. Click on OK. Then what we'll actually do is drop out of Firefox, close the tabs, and we're going to restart Firefox. At which point I expect to see a prompt for the proxy. I'm actually going to put in my credentials with my humongous password. This could be a little bit of a pain if we actually end up switching from proxy to proxy. So let's say OK here. I accepted that. So what we need to do is to get our Porteus Linux ISO image file. So just put in Porteus Linux into the search box. Okay. Just maybe realize I need to install a certificate here. So I guess just as well. So we got to do the old http certs.palmbeach.k12.fl.us. Okay. Certificate. You want to trust this certificate authority to identify websites and hit OK. So that was kind of useful to go through that. Hit Porteus Linux again, and away we are. So Porteus Linux. We want to download. We want the desktop edition. There's a kiosk edition, but we're only interested in the desktop edition. Okay. Kind of interesting because I clicked on the downloads and I'm actually not seeing. Okay, you can download the ISO and other files for the desktop edition for any of our mirrors. So we click. Let's open this in a new tab. Let's just go to our first one here. So we copy, select that, open it in a new tab. We want x86 64. I'm assuming you guys are on 64 bits. The 3.2.2 version. Porteus comes with a number of different graphical user interfaces, GUIs. The most lightweight and the one that we're going to use is XFCE. So we will click on that. And we're going to save that file, which is going to go into the downloads folder of your account. My account's called Ed. Yours will be your first name. You can see up here that it's downloading. Let's get rid of this. So while that's going, what we then need to do is to look at the instructions for installing Porteus. We have info here. We're going to go to tutorials. We're going to go to installing, the official Porteus installation guide, and then installing Porteus to a USB flash drive from Linux. I'll pause the video while I get my thoughts together. Okay, so the first thing is that we've downloaded the ISO file, and what we're going to do is open the containing folder. Now, in order to be able to get to access the information inside this file, we need to mount it, which is, essentially make it look like we inserted a CD into the system. So, as I said, it's under my home directory and downloads. If I right-click on it, it actually offers me the option to open it with a disk image mounter. So if I click on that, okay, we just inserted the medium, so that's what to do. We're going to do nothing. Okay. So what happened is that this appeared, which is the Porteus CD. And as you see, I'm floating over the top of it. You can see it was actually connected into our file system under media/ed/Porteus. So if we click on that, we will find that we have the files that were inside that ISO. Okay, all quite nice and simple. Now what we need to do is we need to also have our USB stick accessible within the Ubuntu Linux. The USB stick's already been inserted into my Windows machine, so it's in the physical machine, and we need to connect it through to from the host to the guest. We've done this before. We're going to go up to Devices, to USB, and Patriot Memory. In fact, I stand corrected. It's already here. If I were to disconnect it, you see that 32 gigabit disappeared. We've actually switched over to Windows because when we disconnected it from Ubuntu, it suddenly appeared in Windows. So we're going to go back to our Ubuntu virtual machine, and we're going to connect it into Ubuntu. So here it is, the Patriot Memory. It's got no tick mark next to it, so it's not been connected through. So we click on that, and I expect to see something appear here, 32 gigabit volume. This is under Media Ed, and then ED34 or E3D4 4F6C. Okay. Now we're going to get a bit technical. What we have to do is we have to open a command line. So it's called a terminal. So we click on this top button, and we're going to type terminal. Okay, so our terminal's open down here. But in fact, to be honest, I've realized that can be a little bit, there's only one thing I have to do in the command line. What I want to do is from this CD, Porteus, I need to copy these files over, but I've just realized the first thing I need to do is I need to take my 32 gigabit, or in your case, it will be an 8 gigabit USB stick, and I need to change the format on it. So again, we'll come up here. We're going to type disks, and we're going to click on this, our disks application. We're going to maximize that, and we're going to go down to our 32 gigabyte thumb drive. So notice here, we have the virtual hard drive, the virtual CD drive, the thumb drive, and then our Porteus ISO mounted as a file system. So what we're interested in is the thumb drive. And we come here and it tells us that this is a single partition and it's fat. And what we're going to do is we're going to format the partition. We're not going to overwrite the data, but we are going to format this as ext4. And we can give it a name. Okay. I'm going to click format. Always prompts you when you're going to do something major like overwrite a complete file system. So here we go. This shouldn't take very long. I don't think it's finished yet. Oh yeah, it says here creating file system. So until that has cleared, until this spinning icon has gone, we haven't finished doing this. This is a 32 gigabyte drive, which is a bit bigger. So I think it potentially will take a little bit longer. it's done now. You can see that it stopped writing to the USB drive, and so here we have our file system. And now we can close up the disks app. So now we have so we have Porteus, our CD, and we have Porteus 1, our new partition. I had to click on it to mount it, and you see it's empty. So we go to Porteus, our CD. We select the boot and Porteus folders, so it's a control click. And we're now going to copy those onto our USB. That actually doesn't take very long because they're not very big. There's only a couple hundred megabytes. So if we look here, we see they've appeared. Now, if we double click on the boot, we can see that we have a couple of files here. These are actually scripts or programs that you would run depending on whether you were in Windows or in Linux. We're in Linux, so we're going to do Porteus installer for Linux. Now is when we need to open the terminal. So I've already opened my terminal, which is down here. I'm going to maximize that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change CD /media /ed, and let me tab here, see what I've got. Porteus, so it's 01 is our USB, and I'm going to go to boot. So media /ed /Porteus 01 /boot, and I'm going to list the files. Okay, I'm going to list them in long format. If you look at the line which is Porteus installer for Linux, and you look to the left, you will see that we have RW, RW, and R, which is read, write, and read. We actually need to make this into an executable program, and the way you do that is with the command chmod +X, which makes it executable. You can type PO and then tab, and it will complete up to the dash before the L or W. Now I type L, which will allow it to know that I mean the Linux file. Hit enter. I'm going to hit the up arrow twice to go back to my ls command. And if you look to the left, you can now see that this is an executable and that it's printed out in green to also highlight the fact that it's an executable file now. We need to run this command with privileges. What the command is going to do is install a bootloader and also set the bootable bit on the disk. So /port, and I hit /po and hit the tab, and it completed it for me. But what I need to do is I need to run this with privileges, and the way you do that in the Linux system is you type sudo, which means let me do this as a super user. And I hit enter, and it asks me for my password. This is the login password for the account. I put that in. It says type OK in order to install. So I'm going to hit OK. Okay. The interesting thing is that it actually failed. So I'm going to pause the video and see if I can figure out why. Give me just a second. Okay, I'm going to follow the instructions exactly. They actually said use the shell command to run the install. So let's see what happens. I'm going to hit OK again. And it still failed. I didn't think it was going to work, but it's saying that a file is missing. It is actually in the lilo.menu file is missing. And if I do list the syslinux directory, that is true, the lilo.menu file is missing. So hang on while I figure out what's going on. Okay, so I figured out what the problem is. I'm back in disks, and if you look at the top here, it tells you that the partitioning scheme is a GUID partition table or GPT. And I think that's the problem. I think we actually need what's called an older style master boot record partitioning table. So I'm going to pause while I figure out how to fix that. But I would tell you that when you buy your USB drive, you will come with the right kind of partition table and you won't hit this issue. Remember that what I've done with this particular drive is I inherited the drive, and it may well be that it already had the GPT set up, and I've got to figure out a way of getting rid of that. So bear with me. Also, just an explanation. So when you plug in a disk to a system, the system has to have some way of determining how the disk or the drive is divided up into partitions. So there has to be something at the very beginning, which is a partition table, which will describe those partitions, and there has to be an agreement on the form of that partition table. And there are two standards. One is master boot record, which is the older one, which has some limitations, and the new one is GPT or GUID partition table. So that's what that's about. So I thought it was just important to give you that piece of information. So in the interest of full disclosure, and again, if you're not interested in this part, then I would advise you to fast forward or just to increase the speed while you're watching this video on YouTube. But I've done a search on how to convert a disk which is partitioned or has a GPT partition table into one with an MBR partition table. And the first thing is, it looks like I have to install an application called gdisk. So I already have a terminal open. So I'm going to do sudo, well, if I could type properly, apt-get install gdisk, which apparently is the application I'm going to need. Okay, the good news is it's already installed. I'm going to figure out which disk it is I need to work on. Okay, so again, I need to run this command sudo fdisk. This just lists off my disks. And the disk I need to work on is /dev/sdb, which is the one at the bottom, which is a 29.8 gigabyte Linux file system. Okay, so it tells me that I have to go into gdisk, sudo gdisk. So let me go here. Sudo gdisk. I'll take the caps lock off. So I'm going to try /dev/sdb, which is the device. Hit enter. So it says found valid GPT with protective MBR using GPT. And so it seems to be saying hit G. Okay, actually, no. I have to hit R first. Recovery transformation command. So, and it's saying, let's hit here. Hell. So, yeah, it's saying from here, hit G. And I have to hit 0. Okay, I'm going to pause this for a second because it's not quite working out how it's supposed to. Okay, it looks to me that what I have to do is the W, which is write the MBR partition table to disk and exit. Okay, so finalize and exit. Okay, so that looks like it's what we needed to do. Let's go back into disks, and you will see that now it is a master boot record and that we have our ext4 partition. This should be unmounted right now. So if we go back to our file systems, interestingly, it is still showing Porteus 1 here, so I'm going to eject that. Okay, let's cancel that. I know why it's probably busy is because I am actually in that file system, so I'm going to CD. Well, in fact, you know what? I don't think I even need to do that. I think even though we've changed the partition table, it hasn't affected the fact that we are in the partition. So what we're going to do is we're going to reattempt our installation just to see what happens. I'm going to hit OK. OK. And that was successful. So that was a little side venture into the problem when you have the wrong kind of partition table. And we'll stop the video at this point because we now have what should be a bootable USB drive.